Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that has shocked the world and shaken the foundations of global power. Russia's once feared war machine, the same one that was supposed to dominate the battlefield and intimidate the West, is now collapsing before our very eyes. What we are witnessing isn't just a temporary setback or a few military missteps, it's a complete unraveling of an empire's military power, economy, and political stability. The end may be much closer than anyone expected, and the cracks are widening faster than Putin's regime can hide them. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the world saw an army boasting about its strength, modern weapons, and unmatched strategy. Moscow claimed it would take Kyiv in days, but over 2 years later, the reality couldn't be more different. The Russian military is exhausted, equipment is breaking down, ammunition is scarce, and morale among troops is at rock bottom. What started as a quick special operation has turned into a long, grinding disaster that's straining the country's lifeblood. The Russian army that once prided itself on tanks, artillery, and massive firepower is now fighting with outdated weapons, rusting vehicles, and low-quality ammunition. Satellite images show tanks from the 1960s being dragged out of storage because modern replacements no longer exist in large numbers. In fact, many of Russia's advanced tanks like the T-90 and T-1 for Armata have either been destroyed in battle or never produced at scale. The Russian defense industry simply cannot keep up. Western sanctions have cut off critical components, from microchips to engine parts, leaving factories struggling to complete even the simplest projects. Inside Russia, there's growing panic. The Kremlin keeps insisting that production is ramping up, but leaked documents tell another story. Factories are working around the clock, yet they lack the materials, the labor, and the funds to sustain war at the scale. Each destroyed tank, missile, or helicopter is a massive loss that Moscow can't replace quickly. Ukraine, backed by Western intelligence and advanced weaponry, continues to hit Russian logistics, fuel depots, and supply lines deep behind the front. Every strike brings Russia's military machine closer to total collapse. Russia's Air Force, once feared, is now limited in what it can do. The loss of hundreds of aircraft and trained pilots has crippled its ability to dominate the skies. Modern jets like the Su-34 and Su-35 require imported technology that is now banned. The result is an air fleet relying on cannibalized parts, poorly maintained systems, and inexperienced recruits. When you combine this with Ukraine's rapidly improving air defenses, Russia's ability to conduct large-scale operations becomes almost impossible. The same collapse is happening in Russia's navy. Once projecting power across the Black Sea, it is now forced to hide behind Crimea's coastlines after multiple devastating Ukrainian strikes. The sinking of the Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, was more than symbolic. It was a signal that Russia's maritime dominance is fading fast. Ukraine's drone and missile attacks have forced Russian ships to retreat hundreds of kilometers from the front line, abandoning crucial sea routes. Each naval loss is another dent in Moscow's prestige and another reason for internal unrest among military commanders. The manpower problem is even worse. Russia's population is shrinking, and the war has drained the country's youth. Thousands of soldiers have died. Many more have been injured, and morale is in freefall. Recruitment campaigns now target prisoners, foreign mercenaries, and even men over 50. Desperation is evident everywhere. Videos have surfaced of poorly trained conscripts sent to the front with little more than rifles from the Soviet era. They are fighting in terrible conditions, lacking medical care, ammunition, and leadership. The once powerful Russian army now looks more like a collapsing empire clinging to survival. Behind the front lines, Russia's economy is breaking under the pressure. Sanctions from the United States, Europe, and other Western allies have crippled key industries. Oil and gas exports, which funded Moscow's military expansion for years, are declining. Many of Russia's biggest customers have turned elsewhere, cutting Moscow off from billions of dollars in revenue. Inflation is soaring, foreign investments have vanished, and the ruble has lost much of its value. Even Russian officials are quietly admitting that they cannot sustain this war much longer without major consequences. The Kremlin's propaganda machine continues to paint a picture of victory, but ordinary Russians are feeling the pain. Food prices are rising, imported goods are disappearing, and unemployment is increasing. The younger generation is fleeing the country in record numbers to avoid conscription or to find a better future abroad. This brain drain means Russia is losing its most talented engineers, doctors, and scientists, the very people who could rebuild its economy. Instead, the state is doubling down on censorship and repression, arresting anyone who dares to speak the truth. Meanwhile, the political cracks inside Putin's circle are widening. Top generals have begun criticizing the government's failures. Some have been dismissed, others mysteriously disappeared, and a few even died under suspicious circumstances. The rebellion led by Wagner Group chief Yevgeny Prigozhin in 2023 was a warning sign of how fragile Putin's control really is. Although the rebellion was quickly suppressed, it showed that even within Russia's own ranks, loyalty to Putin is fading. The elite are fighting among themselves, blaming each other for the disastrous state of the war. On the global stage, Russia's isolation is growing. Countries that once stayed neutral are now distancing themselves. China and India, two of Moscow's biggest trade partners, have become cautious, avoiding direct involvement. Even within its traditional sphere of influence, Russia's grip is weakening. Former allies in Central Asia and Eastern Europe are forging new partnerships, leaving Moscow more isolated than at any time since the Soviet collapse. Ukraine, on the other hand, has turned the tide of the war through determination and strategy. Western weapons, intelligence, and training have made Ukrainian forces more agile and effective. They are not only defending their territory but striking deep into Russian-controlled areas. Drone attacks on Russian infrastructure, sabotage operations, and precision strikes are undermining Moscow's ability to continue this war. Every month that passes, Ukraine grows stronger while Russia bleeds resources, men, and morale. Experts predict that if the current pace continues, by 2026 Russia could face a total military and economic breakdown. It won't just run out of tanks, it will run out of everything: fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and possibly even food for its troops. The war has drained its reserves and shattered the illusion of invincibility. The empire that once stretched across continents now struggles to maintain control even within its own borders. Inside Russia, discontent is simmering. Protests, once rare, are reappearing despite brutal crackdowns. Families of soldiers are demanding answers. Mothers want to know why their sons are dying in a senseless war. The government responds with fear and propaganda, but the truth is harder to silence now. Social media, despite censorship, continues to expose the lies. Soldiers post videos showing the grim reality of life at the front: muddy trenches, lack of supplies, and broken morale. Even the elite are growing anxious. Billionaires who once funded Putin's ambitions are quietly moving their assets abroad. They see the writing on the wall. The stability that once defined Putin's two-decade rule is slipping away. Sanctions have made it nearly impossible to maintain the lavish lifestyles that kept the oligarchs loyal. The internal power struggles are becoming impossible to ignore. Some insiders whisper that if the war continues to go this badly, Putin's own position could be in danger. Meanwhile, Russian propaganda tries to convince the population that the West is to blame for everything. But more and more Russians realize that this war has brought nothing but suffering. The patriotic pride that once fueled the invasion has turned into exhaustion and resentment. With thousands of funerals across the country and a collapsing economy, faith in victory has faded. Even state-controlled polls show declining support for the war, a dangerous sign for a regime built on fear and control. The military failures are also changing how the world views Russia. NATO, once divided, is now more united than ever. Sweden and Finland have joined the alliance, bringing NATO's border right to Russia's doorstep. Western nations are boosting their defenses, modernizing their forces, and ensuring Moscow's aggression is contained. Putin's plan to divide the West has completely backfired. Instead of weakening NATO, he has made it stronger and more determined. Every failed offensive, every destroyed tank, and every lost city is another reminder that Russia's power is not what it used to be. The image of a mighty military superpower has been replaced with that of a desperate state struggling to survive. Even if Russia tries to keep fighting, its long-term prospects look bleak. The industrial base is crumbling, the economy is shrinking, and the people are losing faith. No country can sustain this level of destruction forever. The collapse of Russia's war machine doesn't just mean a military defeat, it could reshape global geopolitics. A weakened Russia will lose influence across Eurasia. Countries that once relied on its support will look elsewhere. The balance of power is shifting, and a new era is beginning, one where Moscow may no longer dictate terms. The consequences will be massive, not just for Russia but for the entire world.
Many analysts now believe that the real question is not whether Russia can win, but how long it can survive in its current form. As resources dwindle, dissent grows, and sanctions bite harder, the system built by Putin is showing every sign of decay. By 2026, the empire could face an internal collapse similar to the Soviet Union in 1991. And this time, there might not be a way to rebuild it. The warning signs are everywhere. From empty shelves in Moscow stores to deserted villages across Siberia, the effects of war and isolation are spreading fast. People are beginning to question the leadership openly, something that was unthinkable a few years ago. The fear that once kept everyone silent is fading, replaced by anger and hopelessness. Russia's war machine is collapsing, and with it, the myth of unstoppable power. The world is watching as an empire crumbles under its own weight. The decisions made in the next year or two will determine whether Russia can find a peaceful path forward or sink deeper into chaos. One thing is clear: the end of this era is near, and the consequences will echo through history for decades to come. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to stay tuned because the story of Russia's downfall is far from over. The coming months will reveal just how deep this collapse truly goes and what it means for the future of global power.